I hope that you've been enjoying our walk through the letter that Paul wrote to the church in Corinth. And by that, I mean that I hope it's helping you grow, in your faith. One of the advantages of sitting in a book like 1 Corinthians is that you get more of a feel, not just for what was happening, but for the background of the people and why they're doing what they're doing. And we get to be reminded that what is true for and about them is actually true for and about us. Listen, I had a guy come up to me in Kroger one time and say, "Hey, you're that preacher at the church, aren't you? You are darn funny." Except he didn't, say darn. I didn't know quite what to do. So I just said, "Hey, thanks, Is it okay for me to admit that I love that? Listen, I don't want to be part of a church that's full of just sanitized, mature believers. And I also don't want to be part of a church that's just the opposite, a lot of immaturity. And there needs to be some growth and maturity going on, and Paul recognized this. I think at times you and I need to be reminded of it as well, that growth is a process, and sometimes we need to grow up and sometimes we need to grow young. We're all in process, regardless of where we are with Jesus, but at the same time, we shouldn't excuse away prolonged immaturity. They were relatively new disciples trying to figure out not only how to follow Jesus, but what does it mean? How are we supposed to be the church? And that's a difficult thing. So they were struggling. They were wrestling with some of their former ways of thinking, and Paul's trying to correct that. One of the areas where they were confused was in the area of sex. So we're going to talk about that this week and next week. And I've made a big deal out of the temple of Aphrodite, or Venus, the Roman name, the goddess of love, being in Corinth. And in chapters 5 through 7, Paul talks to us through what he writes to them. And again, keep in mind that they're new to the church. And in these chapters, his primary focus is sexual immorality. This past Sunday in chapter 5, we saw one of the issues that was tied to it. The next 2 weeks, we'll see that sin is connected to sex and was not just one person's problem. And I'll remind you that what was true of their culture is true of ours. Listen, this week I'm looking forward to walking through what Paul said about what's happening in our culture. I've asked Mark Graham to join me as we look at the impact pornography has had on our homes and what it has to do with sex trafficking. So because of the nature of what we're talking about, I want to encourage children younger than middle school age to be sure to enjoy our children's ministry. Parents, just trying to give you a heads up. Paul reminds us in Romans 12:18, if it's possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. And that's what we strive to do as disciples of Jesus. But what happens when the culture that we live in and the kingdom that we belong to collide, with each other? What happens when the values around us and the truth that we hold up to it's not even that they don't just align, but they actually run contrary to each other. We know the church is to influence the culture around us, but did you realize that at the same time our culture is trying to influence the church? And when this happens, we will face decisions about where we will align our allegiances. So our Sunday morning series on 1 Corinthians has opened up a couple of conversations that we want to explore together in a little more depth. So be sure to register to join us, and you can do that in my email that's with this video. Wednesday, October 4th and October 11th, to look at how culture is trying to impact the church. October 4th, we're talking about gender identity, and October 11th, we're talking about critical race theory. Listen, each week, just a reminder, we offer a Bible reading plan that complements and coordinates what we've read with what we've talked about on Sunday mornings. This week, we will be concluding our 1 Corinthians Part 2, which has walked us through chapters 4 to 6 to help us discover what real church looks like and how believers are meant to work through issues together. We'll complete this 16-day reading plan September 29th. We will begin a new reading plan on October 1st, and I hope you'll join us for that. Listen, this weekend, whether you're online or on campus, I'm looking forward to seeing you.